Okay, there we go. We were in population last time, and I said that I would be discussing about the population of India. Probably this is going to be the last lecture in population. I've given you extra readings. If whatever I have spoken with you all has interested you, you could go into those extra readings on population as such. I would for now start presenting my lecture. Yeah, just to remind you all, in case the network drops and I'm off the screen, you could please call me and let me know that I am not audible, visible, presentation is not visible, and so on and so forth. Okay, just put this up as this is already pinned. And as a consequence, let us now start with okay. Now, normally you'll see that we tend to see all these numbers here and there, and for the general purpose, yes, numbers are fine, I would say, and they don't matter much. But for students exclusively studying population as a part of their syllabus, yeah, any question from anyone? I'm now not on the, so to say, the meeting. So if you have any questions, please don't write them. You can unmute yourself and you can let me know your issues. So coming back to the fact that when we're speaking about Indian population, now, as I said, statistical numbers is one thing, and actually projecting it in the form of census, we'll see that India is one of the only countries, I would say rather one of the few countries which officially counts itself. There is a special provision in the constitution that we would be counting ourselves every 10 years. I think I did mention about this last time also. There are two things that we need to initially see in the slide in front of us. This curve you can see. This curve, let me, is very similar to this curve, basically because they are based on the same statistical data or numerical data, let us say. When we're speaking about a few things of Indian population, first let us have a general idea of how the Indian population has grown since 1901. Though nowadays in most of the maps, tables, data sets, you'll find that population numbers do start with 1901. However, remember that the official numbers are in 1891 as well. And in fact, population census started much before that. But in 1881, the British themselves were not very confident about the way in which the population was counted. So they did not officially put it up. And 1891 again, you'll see that Indian demographers nowadays feel that it's better to start with 1901. So you'll see that if we see the curve, okay, I would like a few things to be brought to your notice is that the first phase of Indian population, it ends here. Okay. Now that happens basically because of the fact that 1921 is the period wherein a lot of Indian soldiers were fighting the First World War. Not exactly 1921, but this is how the impact of population is. It's not direct Okay, it's not that some people leave to fight, some people leave, migrate, and immediately it starts showing in the population numbers as such. We all know, as students of history will confirm, that the First World War started in 1930. And I don't know, I'm not a historian, so I don't know, but it lasted at least 5 to 6 years. A lot of youth, now obviously you're not going to send females to fight. You're not going to send elderly people to fight. You're not going to send children to fight. So it's going to be the young people, which also happens to be the fertile population. Now, if for 5 years minimum, these people are going to be out. And of course, other impacts. It's not only the World War as such, and other impacts as such. And it's slowly going to show in the numbers. And as a consequence, you see that 1921, remember 1921 is the only year wherein the Indian population actually fell to any of the preceding years. After that, of course, there has been a drop in growth rate. Now, let me tell you, drop in growth rate. We have seen what growth rate and birth rate and death rate, etc., is with reference to the demographic transition model. And in fact, you have it in front of you. So, as far as falling actual numbers is concerned, 1921 is the only time wherein we see this happening with us, the Indian population. Okay, and after that, and in fact, it is believed that that involves the first phase of the population. Then, 1921, it enters the second phase. It's a steady growth that the birth rate is high, death rate is fallen drastically. The Britishers took measures of establishing communication linkages, food supplies, etc. The impact of famines, etc., in different parts of the country subsided, and because it was under the country was under the domain of the Britishers, we'll see that wars, etc., were out of question. As a consequence, the birth rate kept up, and this continued to be till the independent phase. So you could say that India was in the first phase of demographic transition model in 1921. 21 to 51, the next 3 decades, it was in the second phase. Now, you'll see that as far as the third phase is concerned, this has been a very difficult phase for India, 1951 to 1981, as such, that the growth rate has been very, very steep. Not that it is not steep after that, but that steepness is basically because of an already increased population. And that's why you'll see that phase 4 is identified as slowing the growth rate. The numbers are increasing, but the growth rate is slowing down as such. This is how you read the growth of Indian population. Okay, you'll see that this is in millions. So you could see, you say the first two numbers will read you the crores, 23 crores, 25 crores, and you'll see that 25.2 crores, and this is 25.1 crore. Not that there was a significant drop in population, but given the phase of demographic transition model India was in, it was very alarming. Of course, it did not happen with India only, it happened with quite a few of countries as such. After which you'll see that it 21 to 31 is again a very gradual phase. To adding 2 crores in 10 years is not much. You'll see that the economic recession 27 to 30 could be a possible reason for that. And in that context, you'll see that in the present circumstances also, the impact of the lockdown on the growth of population would be something very interesting to be studied as such. And you'll see that it's not a couple of days or couple of months that the lockdown has impacted. You'll see that it's now last March onwards. That's March 20 to March 21, April, May, June, July, June. So it's nearly 15 months, and we don't see any respite in the next 3 months as such. So it would be at least 18 months, and this would definitely have an impact as far as growth rate of population is concerned. So that's an interesting thing that could be brought into studies as such. And then you'll see that the rapid increase starts as 31 crores and 36 crores, and then 43 crores and 54 crores. You'll see that I have not discussed the problems of overpopulated countries, underpopulated countries with you all. But let me tell you a very interesting thing that we as population students should know, that as far as the one of the major problems of countries having a larger population is concerned is the fact that they are majorly possibly large population base. Okay, and that's why I'm referring to this aspect. Though the growth rate is low, the number is increasing. Now, I would like to give you an example. Say, for example, you have two countries, you have India and you have Canada. Okay, let us say India's population is 100 crores, that's 1 billion, and let us say population of Canada is 1 crore. Okay, 100 crores, 1 crores. This is hypothetical, but then this explains what problems already countries already having a large population face as such. Now, assuming the fact that the population increase is 1% for both the countries, 1% both the countries annually, let us say, at the end of 1 year, you'll see that India in 1% would be 101 crores, right? It's going to be 101 crores, and this country is going to be 1 crore and 1 lakh. Okay, so this is going to be 101 lakhs as such. So with the same number of increase, okay, with the same number of increase, and that is what is very important and interesting to note about Indian things. You'll see that we say that the government is spending so much. You say that there is a decrease in growth rate. It's not actually, it will not actually show, let me tell you, because even with the same growth rate or annual increase as such, India with a very large base in the same growth number adds 1 crore, but Canada with the same number adds only 1 lakh. So that's an issue with countries like India, China, Indonesia, which already have a large base of population. Controlling it now is getting controlling in the sense actually affecting it is going to is actually showing it, and it's going to be some time before which we should actually be seeing this number effectively being controlled. Once again, another aspect of the Indian population, another in the sense the tabular format. Okay, the population, you'll see that how it has grown in millions as such. I did speak about the 252 and the 251 millions as far as the difference between 1911 and 1921 are concerned. Minus 0.31% increase as just a moment. Okay, you'll see that the maximum increase in population, though we say that populations have increased very rapidly since, let us say, what, 68 to 84 crores, 84 crores to crossing 1 billion by 2001 and 121 billion by 2011. However, India touched its maximum growth rate way back in 1971. Okay, 1971 would be this number here, 24.80. Now, there's one other important thing to note about this. The fact that the growth rate for 1971 is 24 or nearly 25%. Okay, decadal growth rate, 25% is a significant thing, let me tell you. It shows in 1971, so it has been increasing much higher, at a higher rate in the decade before that. Always remember that what I am reading for 1911 is something that has happened between 1901 and 1910. Similarly, what I read for 2011 is something that is happening between 2001, has been happening between 2001 and 2011 as such. That's a very important thing that we have to note. Ever since 1971, the population decadal growth rate has been declining significantly, and I would say between 1 and 11, it has fallen down by literally 4 points, and we expect it to have fallen much similarly, at least if not much more, by 2021. But if you have been reading or you can go to the website of the census uh, board of India. You'll see that they have postponed the census for 1 year, basically because of the pandemic as such. So that's going to be, and the impact of the pandemic, as I've already said, the impact of the pandemic on the growth rate of the population will be seen as such. But studying it from 2011 to 2020, and impact of 2020 and 2021 on the population is something which is going to be very interesting uh, for us. Okay, now whether you call it positive, whether you call it negative, you'll see that some may call it positive basically because the population numbers have been arrested, but at what cost? You have lost population, you know, valuable human resources. Initially, you thought that it was only the senior citizen population, but you'll see that the second wave has taken toll of the younger population. Also, they speak about a third wave. We don't know how long this is going to be lasting. So all that needs to be interestingly observed as far as population is concerned. In fact, let me highlight here that I have given a food for thought for any student who would be interested to write his assignment on Indian population or population as such. Before we come back to a few things about India, I would once again go back to the other day we spoke about this map, right? You'll see that it gets very interesting when we go into it continent-wise. As such, I did speak about the fact that major cities of the continents down under, that's in southern hemisphere, they have a coastal location because of the export interest these countries have as such. So you'll see that if you locate on the map, you're going to have major cities located here with very high densities of population. This lesser density, all of you all will agree, is going to be uh, Amazon is this side, and then you have the Brazilian highlands. Those who come from the state board must have studied Brazil and India as such. Okay, this, okay, if you have geographically verified, this is the Patagonian desert in Argentina. Okay, you'll see that with the size of the continent of South America, the density, high density patches are very low. The same thing about Australia. The other day we did speak about the fact that it's the southeastern part that of Australia, wherein we have significantly higher populations, and in fact we'll see that the cities of Sydney and Melbourne have are two cities. I am not very sure about their populations. I had the number in my mind, but it has gone off. You'll see that if you add up the populations of Sydney and Melbourne and you compare it with the whole population of Australia, it's significantly large. It comes to at least 25% of the population of Australia. So while we were speaking about the problem of rapid increase of population as far as overpopulated countries are concerned, there is a very interesting thing that is happening with these countries which are underpopulated, that is called as rural depopulation. Okay, when we say that people in India are moving from rural areas to urban areas, that's one thing to note. But in say people from rural to urban areas in Australia, in countries like Australia, Canada, it's something very difficult to perceive, basically because already there is less amount of population, you'll see that less than one individual per square kilometer in this whole area. And from this, you'll see that people move towards these high pockets of Sydney, Melbourne, etc. By the way, I don't know whether I've spoken about this to you all, that the very reason that Canberra is supposed to, is the official capital of Canada is, sorry, of Australia, is the fact that there was a heavy tussle between whether Melbourne should be the capital of Australia, whether Sydney should be the capital of Australia. Eventually, it was decided that let not any one of them, let in fact both of them not be the capital of Australia, and they identified a new place called as Canberra for the capital. That's one story about Australia and its capital selection. Another story is that the reason you have rural depopulation is that these are developed countries, let me tell you, and maintenance of high standards of living is a very interesting aspect here and an important aspect as such. And you'll see that every day youth from rural areas aspire to move to cities like Brisbane and Perth, and Canada, and Australia. Sorry, Canada. Oh, sorry, not Canada and Australia. I just got carried away. Melbourne and Sydney. And as a consequence, you'll see that the distance between every individual, leave aside families, every individual is higher in the rural areas. Now, how does this impact population, rural depopulation further? You'll see that when it comes to supply of resources, say for example, it could be a telephone connection, it could be a water supply, it could be electric supply, and so on and so forth. You'll see that in a country like India, it becomes cheaper basically because the density of people is higher. So you just draw a line and of electric supply or telephone supply or a canal for a pipeline for water supply, and it could help a few tens of people. Now here, for every individual, you need to invest a huge amount, and that's why such countries they shy away from investing huge amounts because it's going to it actually impacts very less number of population. So there is a dearth of uh, resources available in rural. And when we come to compare between facilities available in rural parts and facilities available in urban parts, remember these are developed countries. So urban Australia is going to be much advanced as compared to the restricted supply of services as far as rural is concerned. The gap could be more than Indian differences of rural and urban patches as such. If we go into the micro details of it, that's a serious issue for some countries. That's rural depopulation. Yes. We move to continents rather. As I said that in the US, this part has a very high density of population. In fact, besides that, the rest of Canada and US is either between 1 to 10 or less than 1 individuals. Northern Canada, just like Australia, is very low density population. And central and western parts of Canada as well as America is population with 1 to 10 individuals. We move to Europe, and as far as the European continent is concerned, you will see that Western Europe, okay, the developed countries of Italy and France and England, Germany, and all those countries around them, you can see that they have very high densities of population. They have initially reaped the benefits of industrial revolution, and thus this patch. Okay, and if you remember when I spoke about how the population phases out, okay, immediately next to high density, you're going to have moderate density and so on and so forth. So Eastern Europe is going to be moderate density. As you move north, which again is a fringe area of high density, but you'll see that the cold restricts the Scandinavian countries from having very high densities of population, even moderate densities. So thus they classify into low densities. And as you further move north, and you come into Russian part of Europe, you'll see that the densities are between 1 and 20 individuals per square kilometer as such. So that's an interesting thing. Major countries, Spain is one country which has moderate density. Otherwise, you will take aside Spain, you'll see that the majority of the countries of Western Europe are high density populated. Now, when we say high density, it again means around 100 individuals. The moment you change the index, okay, the number of people per square kilometer, you'll see that these maps keep on changing. And the more maps you see by using this change in scale as such, it tends to keep on getting interesting and so on and so forth. Obviously, you'll see that the cities of Germany and France and let us say Spain, as well as Portugal, Italy, and England is concerned, the cities are going to be very high density populated. You can search for these numbers on Google, and you for yourselves can enjoy the variation of these densities in urban parts of these countries and beyond urban parts of these countries. This is a very interesting continent. I've kept it separately basically because this is the continent that the world is watching will be watching in years to come, because you'll see that nearly 80%, if not 80, at least 75% of this population is a low density population. But recently there is an increase in the population. The fertility rates of women are amongst the highest as far as the African continent is concerned. So this is a point of concern for demographers around the world, basically because not only is the population of this continent increasing rapidly, uh, you'll see that the resources majority already have been depleted. The political conditions in different parts of different countries of this particular continent are not favorable. There is a lot of problem as far as health and hygiene is concerned. So the growth of population here is going to be a real task as far as the United Nations and other organizations which look into the resources, human resources of the world is concerned. Okay, the other day I was speaking about how the Nile dominates the distribution of population. And see, you will note how very interestingly it's only along the banks of the Nile that the high density population is. Now, this is a point wherein I believe you have the Aswan Dam. It's only beyond the Aswan Dam that the population seems to increase. And then I think you have one Nile coming here and you have one Nile coming here. It is believed that the fertility of the Nile is all to do with this Ethiopian highlands. The Ethiopian highlands are volcanic, and you'll see that all the rich minerals come from here and they get deposited onwards. Okay, thus you will not find much density of population beyond that particular point. Uh, then the other day I spoke about South Africa also. You see that the Cape regions basically, because a lot of international trade took place and takes place along this particular curve. As a consequence, population densities are high and they phase out from high to moderate and uh, moderately low, and then of course. And then you'll see this is called as the belly of Africa. This is called as the belly of Africa. Again, Congo, etc., is where the Republic of Congo, and then you have Ivory Coast and Gabon, etc., are a few countries here. You'll see that they are rich in resources, uh, forest resources, and mineral resources as a consequence. Density, though I would say it's not very high. You compare it with the rest of African continent, you'll see it's this one patch which has high density of population. Then we come to Asia. Spoken about Asia, you'll see that, frankly speaking, majority of the Asian continent is a difficult continent as such. You'll see that the Central Asian highlands, okay, we spoke about migration in these areas, okay, China as well as the other CIS countries as such. you'll see that high densities of population. It's more the coast of Pacific from Japan all the way to South Korea and then the eastern part of China. Okay, you'll see that the rivers which come from the Tibetan highlands, okay, the Wangho, the Yangtze, and of course uh, the Mekong River, etc. These all feed uh, the high densities of population as such. It continues into Indonesia. Indonesia being volcanic islands, you'll see that again the minerals will help agriculture, food production, and consequently high densities of population. India is the same. I would again differ a bit on this basically because yes, we are going to come to the general distribution, density-wise distribution of Indian population. But as I said, we're going to distribute on a national scale. India would qualify as a country with a population of more than 100 individuals per square kilometer. To the west of India, you have those pockets of dryness, and as a consequence, the population again falls. Okay, the Thar Desert, which from India moves into Pakistan, and for the sake of the Indus River, you'll see that you have high densities or at least moderate densities of population. As you move away from the Indus, you'll see that the Punjab plains, as they are called, okay, some of Punjab, of course, is in India, some of Punjab is in Pakistan. So it's these Punjab plains which show the population, but otherwise you'll see that majority of the say surfaces or parts of Asia are between what 1 to 10 individuals per square kilometer. You see that even China, as a matter of fact, majority of China is low density of population. It's only the eastern bords which have a high density of population. So this is about Asia. And now let us come to India. And as far as India is concerned, I purposely put up these two maps for our reference. What is so important? If you have learnt your maps in your earlier classes, I'm sure NCERT students may have. The first map to your left hand side is called as an isoplete map, and the one to your right hand side is called as the choroplete. Okay, what is the difference between them? ISO is natural flow of lines. Choro is administrative. Okay, you'll see that the divisions toward the right side are state-based, while the divisions to your left-hand side are natural. What each of them has their own importance. The left one, you can easily identify what could be the possible reasons for high density of population as such, the natural regions, the human reasons, and so on and so forth. You'll see that obviously this is the Himalayan part, this is the Himalayan part, so this is going to reduce the population. Now if you compare it here to the map immediately next to it, the isoplete shows low density of population in Himachal and Uttarakhand, but the choroplete, you'll see that immediately shows a change in the marking as such. Again, you'll see that when it comes to uh, some more aspects, okay, you'll see that extremities of climate here as such shows very low density towards the western part of Rajasthan. But if you take the whole of Rajasthan, it qualifies as a different density, in a different density group as such. Same thing happens with states like Gujarat, Maharashtra, Karnataka, Kerala. Either way stays in high density. But again, if you come to speak about uh, Andhra Pradesh and possibly if these maps do not have Telangana in them, Telangana could have been a different picture. The coastal parts have a bit of higher density of population. And that's basically because you have ports and you have development of communication and so on and so forth in these. So that's an interesting aspect. Another interesting aspect is the whole Gangetic belt has a very high density of population. But when you look into the choroplete divisions, you'll see that Punjab and Haryana will have a lower density as compared to the plains of Ganga in Uttar Pradesh and of course Bihar and West Bengal. As okay, so whenever we look at maps, okay, let us not take them for granted. As geographers, we need to go into the details of that. This is just one example I've shown you how different maps could manipulate conditions and that could lead to misinterpretations of various types. And that is one of the reasons why we need to look into uh, details from various angles as far as these aspects are concerned. I was looking for a general distribution of map, but then I could not get it. So I would try to discuss it on the this map itself. That the population dynamics of India. You'll see that while we generally speak about India in a very broad context, a population of 130 million plus and high density populated. But as I said, if you zoom into the Indian states as such, there is a significant difference that you will find. What is this difference? If I take the uh, Tropic of Cancer, which is generally taken as the dividing line of population also, quality of population also, or let us not say, let us not be biased about by saying it quality, I would say the number of population also. There is a variation that you would see between the northern parts of India and the southern parts of India, starting with Gujarat, Maharashtra, so you see that Gujarat, Maharashtra, and the other southern countries, okay, so southern states, sorry, till Andhra Pradesh, as such. Okay, you'll see that if you see the population dynamics of these or numbers of these states, you will see that while India people are still putting it into the late expanding stage of the demographic transition model, you'll see that every state in fact varies. Southern states of India actually are much ahead. Okay, they're already into the late expanding stage as far as population is concerned. Uh, that's one aspect of it, and artificial increase of population in the sense due to migration of migrant population workforce in particularly in states of Maharashtra, Gujarat, and now in the other southern state also is a significant thing to note. As such, we'll see that people from northeastern parts of India are moving into different directions. The normal famous destinations are Delhi. Okay, particularly there is this peculiar route that these people follow. Not only northeastern, but you'll see that migrants from uh, Bihar and Uttar Pradesh also will come to Delhi, and then they'll go to these industrial cities of Maharashtra and Gujarat and so on and so. As far as Orissa is concerned, it's a dicey situation. You'll see that Orissa is one state which has a very low per capita income, in spite of the fact that it gives a lot of minerals to this country. As such, it has a lot of tribal population. But it's a very silent state. You'll see that you'll not find much disturbances from this particular state. Though you'll see that to the north you have Jharkhand, to the west you have Chhattisgarh, and all these places are some parts of these states are known for Naxalist activities as such. Orissa does not reflect much of it. Uh, I remember 2 decades ago there was this issue of religious conversions. That was a very hot thing from Orissa. Beyond that, you'll see that you don't hear much about Orissa as such. Till recently, I don't know whether I should be writing this, but till recently, we in fact classified Indian states, some Indian states, into this group. Bimaru states. Now, of course, it is not. Some states have taken an objection that you should not be calling us as Bimaru because it means in Hindi it means a sick state as such. So it's not fair to call us as a Bimaru state. Okay, these included Bihar, BI. Okay, these included Madhya Pradesh. Okay, these included Rajasthan and this included Uttar Pradesh as such. But whatsoever the emotional aspect would be, the fact remains that there are many difficult uh, statistics from these states as well as a few other northern states as well. When I'm speaking about a few other, when we speak about sex ratio, you'll see that western parts of Uttar Pradesh, Punjab, and Haryana horrible rates of male-female ratio, and you must have studied about and read about those various stories of how difficult people in Haryana particularly are finding to get bridegrooms for their children. Okay, you'll see that I don't know whether this is true or not, but I have heard that there are cases wherein one female is married off to a couple of males, at times even three males, for the purpose that there is no female population in certain areas of certain villages of Haryana as such, and and western parts of Uttar Pradesh also shows that. You'll see that there is a huge discrepancy when it comes to Rajasthan between the rural parts of Rajasthan and the urban parts of Rajasthan. As said, the urban parts are much ahead of the rural parts. The urban parts, now we say urban, it's basically all those pockets where is these princely uh, states are, in the sense Udaipur is a princely state, Jaipur, and all these Bhilwara, I don't know where Bhilwara falls into this, but then majority of these places which are known to us at some point of time have been the basis of a princely seat during the British times as such. And this was reflected through a fact that the female literacies in urban Rajasthan and rural Rajasthan. Okay, I'm giving you facts. I may not be giving you figures as such, but this is something that I have been tracking. Okay, female literacy between urban Rajasthan and rural Rajasthan, you check the numbers, there is a horrible difference. In spite of the fact that Kota, which sends a huge number of kids to the IITs and the IIMs, and of course the medical institutes as well. But you'll see that those who go for these are not only people from Rajasthan, but who come here from different parts of India, particularly northern parts of India. Okay, I've heard of cases wherein parents with their kids shift to Kota. They rent places. They're here for 2 years of HSC, 11th and 12th. Yes, this is a fact. I've I've seen, I know families who have been there, and you see that at times they don't get through, so they will increase their stay by another 1 year, 6 months, and see that their child gets into these prestigious institutes. That's one picture of Rajasthan. On the other side, the other picture of Rajasthan is not much encouraging as such, particularly as far as the female index is concerned, as far as various parameters of population. This continues into Madhya Pradesh also. Fortunately, unfortunately, you don't know, but in the Naxal affected areas of Chhattisgarh, Jharkhand, you don't find much difference between male and female population. One is, but naturally made to think of the fact that then what is all this development about? Okay, it's so very weird to call this developed when the pictures are so weird. Then, of course, the I would dare to say, but then the less we speak about the population dynamics of Uttar Pradesh and uh, Bihar, the better. basically because even today, a significant amount of population, particularly in Uttar Pradesh, has a rural base as such. Okay, you will see that heavily impacted with the Gangetic Plain as such. Majority of the cities are along the banks of the Ganga, and you'll see that it's a huge population. Uttar Pradesh, particularly, you'll see that the population of Uttar Pradesh is nearly as high as the population of Brazil. So the chief minister of Uttar Pradesh is as good as the president of Brazil. Okay, you'll see that I somewhere on the net saw how to which countries of the world do our states match their population with. I think I told you on that Maharashtra matches with Japan. Okay, you could again, this could be a very interesting exercise for anyone who has still not thought about their assignment topics as such, to compare the populations of the various states in India, and then to compare the population of countries in other parts of the world as such. Another interesting thing that I missed out was, if you see the northeastern parts of India, you'll see that the isoplete, it paints it under one particular thing. But when it comes to the choroplete, you'll see that while Arunachal, Sikkim, and I think it's Tripura, which will have a very, very low density of population. Assam valley of the Brahmaputra has a high density, while Meghalaya, Manipur, Nagaland would have a moderate density of population. So these are a few observations I could make as far as we have already invested a lot of time in population as such. We have yet to do three more topics, and I think I would be taking up a lecture tomorrow. I don't know how long, but I plan to take up a lecture because it's nearing the 20th of June, and we should be finishing before the 30th, so that you have some time to revise before you go for your final examinations as such. If you have any queries with population, etc., you could personally message me, or we could discuss it on the WhatsApp group as well. All these observations you could do so. From my side, as far as population is concerned, we have done the majority of the distribution of population, the theories of population, the distribution of population in the world, distribution of population in India. So, my side, I've discussed and given you not only what is required in the syllabus, but obviously much beyond that also. Uh, which could help you in various aspects of learning as far as population numbers are concerned. So that's all from my side. I will let you know, say, by evening today, whether I am actually going to conduct your lecture tomorrow. In If you ask me for the probability, it's more than 50%, and it's only that I need to gather some matter and put it up in so to say PPT format. Okay, so we need to start with settlements. We're going to do the different types of settlements in India, and of course beyond India. What are the factors which affect distribution of settlements, and so on and so forth. That's going to be for tomorrow. For now, if you have any questions, you can ask me your questions. By the time I am going to stop the